Hi, how are you? Good.
So, to my left is Chief Goncalves from the Pawtucket Police Department. I'm sure you all know her. She's also the Public Safety Commissioner for the City of Pawtucket. And everybody knows Colonel Tommy Oates, probably from Providence, and now Woonsocket, Chief of Woonsocket Police Department. And we have a representative from Flock Safety, Mr. Craig Lynch, who's against the wall there. And the screen backdrop, if you get really hard questions for me about privacy, that's their privacy expert from Flock Safety, but I think you'll be nice today, hopefully, so we'll see. Okay, as I mentioned, I'm joined by my fellow chiefs from their respective cities. We're announcing a partnership today with Flock Safety. They're a public safety technology company out of Atlanta, Georgia. And what they do is they bring communities together and law enforcement together using automated license plate reader technology, commonly known as ALPR. And we have engaged these companies to install cameras in our respective cities. Many of you were questioning what the quote-unquote mystery cameras. I know we got somebody here, Parker's here, but these cameras were just, installation was just completed, and we fully intended to have this announcement. Unfortunately, we didn't get to it before people saw the cameras and were kind of questioning what was going on out there. But the goal of these cameras, to be clear, is to reduce crime and prevent crime in our communities. We're engaged in a 60-day free, no obligation trial period. So this is a trial, and we want to evaluate the value of these cameras, the effectiveness of these cameras. These cameras are being used widely across the country by thousands of law enforcement agencies for the last probably 2 decades. So this isn't new technology, but it's new to the state of Rhode Island. It's new to our cities. In Cranston, we have installed 29 Flock safety cameras, 29 cameras in Cranston, throughout Cranston, where there's ingress and egress routes, as well as busy intersections, and they're all on public property. Public property, you've probably seen some of them. We're not trying to be covert about it. These cameras are large. They're attached to solar panels. You see them out there. They're readily visible, and that's intentional. In Pawtucket, there's 17 cameras that have been installed, and 13 in the city of Woonsocket. We have drafted policies for our respective police departments specifying the use of these cameras, and we're in the process of training all of our officers on how to access the database and use the equipment and what the alerts that come out of these cameras, how to respond to the particular alerts. So we are doing roll call trainings. We anticipate policies and our trainings to be complete probably by the end of the week, at least in Cranston. And our hope is to stop monitoring these cameras and the alerts over the next week or so. And these cameras, the goal is to provide objective evidence for criminal activity. So they capture still photographs of the license plates or the rear vehicles that travel by these cameras. I want to highlight that they do not capture the occupants of the vehicle. They do not photograph it. Intentionally, they photograph the rear of the vehicle, so there's no privacy, if you will, at that point for someone that doesn't alert or trigger an alert from one of these cameras. They're not video cameras, so just so you know, they're still photos is what's taken of the rear of the vehicle. And again, they're all focused specifically on public roadways, not sidewalks or anything like that. And they do not independently record people or faces. And one of the concerns is they have facial recognition technology. Again, they do not record people or faces. They're focused specifically on vehicles. And the goal is to reduce crime and prevent crime in our neighborhoods. They will never be used for traffic enforcement. In fact, they don't have the capabilities to do that. So in other words, I know some concerns that they'll be used for speeding or to identify unregistered motor vehicles or uninsured motor vehicles. That is not the intent of these cameras, nor will these cameras be used at any time for that purpose. One advantage that these cameras do have, if a vehicle passes by one of our cameras that do not have a license plate on it at all, we will be alerted in real time. That includes dirt bikes, in ATVs. And as you know, we've had some serious public safety concerns with those type of vehicles here in Cranston, and I'm assuming in Pawtucket as well as possibly Woonsocket. So if we get a pack of ATVs that come into Cranston, we're going to know within seconds that they've arrived. The goal of these cameras, what happens is when the plate is captured, it's cross-checked through NCIC, which is the National Criminal Intelligence Center. And in that database, there is wanted persons, stolen motor vehicles, Amber Alerts, which I know you're familiar with if a car has been entered and associated with an Amber Alert, Silver Alert. So if any of those plates have been entered in connection to a person that's involved in criminal activity is wanted, or the vehicle is stolen, or an Amber Alert, it immediately triggers a notice to our dispatch centers, as well as several cell phones if we choose to do so, and it will send us a photographic image of that plate and exactly what camera it was triggered by. And then obviously we'd be able to intervene. Our policy says that you have to continue to investigate, so you would run that information further. But I want to make a point that's important too, is these cameras are not running license data or registration data as they capture these plates. Okay, so all it is simply taking an image of the plate. Now if there's an alert, of course the officer is going to take a secondary inquiry, and he will do an inquiry in the system as they do now. They'll find out who the operator is of that plate, but unless there's an alert or a reason for us to run the plate, we won't be running the plate. So it will just sit in a database. And I want to mention the database is purged every 30 days unless the plate is connected with criminal investigation, it's evidence in a crime. So that's a feature that Flock Safety has. I know there's a lot of concerns that this data is going to be stored for years at a time. We're sensitive to that. We're not tracking individuals at all. We're not running information about people unless it triggers an alert. Now, if there's a crime that takes place, of course this database is available to our investigators, and they will be able to do a query in that database, and they can look for characteristics of a vehicle, a particular plate, and obviously you can imagine how many times is there a crime that takes place, whether it be a drive-by shooting, whether it be a homicide, where somebody took off from a scene and we have no lead at all at that point in time. We'll be able to search the database of these cameras by date, time, characteristic of motor vehicle, plate, and we'll be able to get a lead and hopefully make an apprehension on some of these cases that currently we're not able to do so. We appreciate the public's concern on privacy interest. We are launching, with assistance of Flock Safety, a privacy portal, if you will, transparency portal, correct myself, transparency portal, that will be available through the Cranston Police website. And I understand both chiefs will also have a link on their websites. And what that portal does, it will provide information on how many cameras we have, how many scanned images took place. Anytime the log is searched, it will document the fact the log is searched. And I can tell you that the log can only be searched for official law enforcement purposes and usually connected to a criminal investigation. And that log is internal, will be audited on a regular basis, and any detective or investigator who searches it will have to have a reason to search it for official law enforcement purposes. I want to also mention that these cameras don't do anything other than record plates that go by. This is no different than an officer sitting on a corner with a notepad and pen right now, and the date and time and a plate of a vehicle that passes. Is much more efficiently done, and with less resources, if you will. And right now officers are able to run plates periodically as they're going about their duties, as they travel with their MBTs in their cars. So I don't want to downplay the technology, but it will save time, resources, and we believe it will reduce crime in the long run. And I just want to make a statement that this technology is not new. I mentioned that. If you go into the Providence Place Mall, guess what? Your plate's being read by a plate reader. If you travel down the highway, past one of these gantries tolling places, your car or truck's being recorded as well. There's Ring doorbell cameras throughout the city. If you don't expect that you're going to be on camera probably multiple times a day, then you're not keeping up with the times. Unfortunately, or fortunately, technology exists. Some people are scared of technology, but we believe we can embrace it and we can use it to solve crime and prevent crime in our city. I just want to leave you with this. So the technology, if you're a law-abiding citizen, you'll have no problems, I think, with these cameras. I think it will keep you safer, and they've been used with great success across the country. It's a force multiplier for the police departments is what it is. If you're a criminal, be warned, if you come into one of our cities, these cameras will let us know as soon as you arrive, and we will intercept you. If you are lucky enough to commit a crime and escape, we will use the data collected by these cameras to help track you down. So that's an overview of these cameras. I know you're going to have some questions.
Two questions.
Yes.
Where does the database reside?
It's a great point. So it's cloud-based, it's encrypted, and the only people that have access to the data is the respective police department that collects it. So the Cranston police data will be encrypted. Even Flock Safety does not have access to view the data that's being collected.
Only your departments?
That's correct.
And of necessity, it's going to take a picture of every car that goes by, right?
That's correct. There are probably thousands of images, more than likely. I will tell you that the data will never be resold, and that's why we went with Flock Safety. And I can tell you some other companies out there do exactly that. They collect the data and then they sell it. That will never happen with Flock Safety cameras. It will never happen under our watch.
And when the trial period is over, what is this going to cost?
It's $2,500 a year per camera.
Per camera?
Per camera, and a $500 installation, one-time installation fee. So, and these cameras are leased. They're not owned, but they're under our authority, and again, Flock Safety doesn't have any access into the database.
How long has it been going on?
We haven't started to monitor them. Like I said, we just literally installed them. They finished installation last week.
The installation costs you nothing, correct?
No?
Well, if we decide to keep the system, we'll pay $500.
$250.
$250. Oh, thank you. You just cut to $250.
And is this cost strictly for Cranston PD, or is this split amongst these departments?
So we're independently doing this. So we were approached by Flock Safety at the same time, more or less, and these cameras were in a nearby Massachusetts city, and I was really impressed with the statistics that they presented to us. So I think all three of us kind of got approached at the same time, and then we learned each other was doing this. So we're here unified today, but these are independent projects, and we have to make a decision independently if we want to keep the cameras. But again, if we don't keep them, there's no cost to any of our communities.
Which city was it in Massachusetts that's employed this?
I don't want to say. It's a large city nearby here, and I'm not sure if they announced it or what they did.
And
but
did the price just come down here and now, or did
I might have gotten the price wrong. Yeah.
I mean, can you talk
Yeah.
it down a little more?
I don't know. Can you? But
It's in the price of $2,500 per camera per year, and a one-time install fee of $250 per year.
250. So the 500 figure he gave, is it correct?
Correct.
it's $250. So.
Tell us where some of the cameras are and how you determine where they ended up going.
Well, apparently you spotted some of them, so you know where they are. So we don't want to release the exact location, and I can tell you this. We want this to be a deterrent for criminals coming into our city, and we believe if we broadcast the location, there's an opportunity to circumvent them. And also, these locations may not be permanent. We are going to assess the data as it comes in, and we might reduce the number of cameras, we might expand the number of cameras, it depends.
How do you determine where to put them?
Well, we work with Flock Safety, and they viewed a map of our cities, and we went for ingress and egress points for our cities, as well as busy intersections.
Reservoir Avenue.
Bill, you probably know where they are already. You're probably counting them, but there's 29 out there. It's kind of like go out and find Waldo, but they're out there.
Why can't they be revealed to the public?
Just I mentioned, number one, the locations, maybe we might move them at some point. And number two, if a person's coming in to our city to commit a crime, they might travel a route to circumvent the cameras.
And if you decide to move these cameras, is there gonna be more incurred cost?
There is a relocation fee, I believe. How much is that, Craig?
Install fee.
$250. But it won't. But I believe if we move it at the end of the trial period, is there going to be a cost? No.
You don't have to keep all 29 cameras.
No.
You don't have to keep 17 or 13.
No, what we did in Woonsocket,
Chief, can you step in front of
Sure. Well, we did in Woonsocket, we began conversations with them back in April as to what their capabilities were, and we found out through this process is what went on that Cranston was looking at them, and so was Pawtucket. As a matter of fact, we just had a meeting this morning, a Zoom meeting with the people that are involved in getting it off the ground for Flock. Those cameras are in Woonsocket. They are capable to be up and running now, but we're just at the process of gaining access and going through the trainings, as the Colonel had said, and deciding who's going to get access to that. And what we did in Woonsocket, one of the things that Flock was very helpful to, is we sent them some crime data, some hotspot maps, to also overlay points of egress in the city, so they could, and that's what they do. They do this professionally. They do it in other communities. So they were able to come up what they thought would be, on the limited test period that we have of the 13 locations, what would be the best and most effective. And we'll be able to evaluate that over the next 60 days out of that 13 locations, what ones do come most. And one of the things that I think that brought all of our attention to this, I think if you look statistically, almost 70% of all crime is committed. There's some type of a vehicle related to that crime, no matter what it is. So if you can identify the vehicle used in the crime, that's an important step in getting to who the individuals were that were in the vehicle.
You don't expect to monitor these in real time, do you? You do?
Yes, the alerts, yeah. I'll let to...
Yeah, so our dispatch center, as well as individual officers, can download the app, if you will, and there's a notification alert. So the second it goes by one of these locations, it goes off, and probably quite a bit.
Among the three communities, are these the only cameras that you have, or do you have others pre-existing?
You mean license plate recognition cameras or cameras in
Any
general?
kind of cameras.
We have cameras at our schools, you know, that we can access public buildings.
Yeah.
But I'll let the others.
Businesses, you
Yeah,
know, some
businesses.
businesses.
We have the program where they businesses can and residents can register their surveillance cameras. We don't have access to them, so we know where they are in case a crime is committed. But I believe Chief Goncalves can speak. They have speed cameras and traffic enforcement cameras outside of these cameras.
So we do have school zone speed cameras, and we also have red light cameras within the city. That's been probably 18 to 24 months now.
What do you think of this program?
So for the city of Pawtucket, like the chief said and the colonel said, a lot of the crimes are associated with motor vehicles. So it is helpful for us, especially when we have any type of major crime, any violent crime, any drive-bys, any shootings. We usually have a vehicle that's associated with this. This will give us a step up into locating that vehicle. We work with very many businesses, several businesses within our communities that share their surveillance video with us as it is now, but this will be in real time and we'll be able to monitor it.
Guessing this was not a tough sell to your city's leadership?
Well, I think everything, I don't want to say everything's a tough sell, but I think you have to prove that it's going to work within our respective communities. So if it doesn't show a benefit to our communities, then obviously the administration wouldn't want to support something that's not benefiting the residents of the community. The whole goal of the program is obviously to keep the residents safe within our respective communities.
60-day pilot for all of you?
Yes.
60 days, yes.
What's the long-term contractual obligation?
None.
So it's year to year, month to month, what are we talking about?
Well, you talking during the trial, there's no obligation at the end of it.
If you decide to go with it, what is the
If
contractual obligation?
my understanding, and Craig can correct me, if we decide to get rid of the cameras, this is prorated for that particular year. Is that correct, Craig? If say we canceled 6 months in and we paid up front, I believe they're prorated. We mentioned if a law was passed that prohibited that, although I can tell you that there's only a couple states in the whole country that prohibit or restrict the use of these cameras.
What I'm asking is, so if you agree to do this, even if you, I'm not talking about cancellation, I'm talking about, are you signing a 5-year contract, 10 years?
It's one year at a time.
Okay.
Yeah, it's an annual contract.
Chief, when were the cameras installed?
Over the last couple weeks, they just finished up. I didn't monitor, but in the last week, we put the last ones up.
On the 12th.
12, yep.
All right, is your public safety responsible for the management of the hardware? What happens if someone vandalizes these cameras? Like in Providence, we see traffic cams get vandalized. Who takes care of that? What kind of costs are we looking at to fix these things?
They're leased, and if they're damaged, Craig, correct me if I'm wrong, but they will be replaced by Flock Safety. It wouldn't be a cost to the department.
Right. For first camera damaged, we will replace for free. Second camera damaged is a $500 fee per camera. What about the third camera? for the camera?
It's 500.
Okay, so after the second camera consistently, it's $500 to replace the camera.
Correct. And we have them in some of the most dangerous neighborhoods in California. We've had very little issues.
And where is Flock based, and how would they get here to fix this?
They're based in Atlanta, but they have representatives, and actually Craig's a representative for this area. So they were very accommodating. They were a great company to work with up to this point. I don't expect any different if we do decide to sign a contract.
I'm curious on, because there is a good focus here on transparency. You have the transparency portal. Will images be available to the public if the public wants to search them, or say there is a crime and you want to get that information out to the public? Will we be able to access that? Like, say something does happen, will we be able to access those images?
The public will not be able to access the images, but you bring up a great point. If we did have a vehicle and, you know, there's no plate on it, or it's blurred, you know, well, these are very high, even at night, these cameras can take very focused images. But, yeah, we would be able, just like we do in any of the crime, if we have a picture of a suspect vehicle, we would put that out there. But there's been a lot of success stories. As a matter of fact, there's a handout there that talks about a lot of the successes of these cameras. I thought about the scenario. So there was a kidnapping, say, in the state of Georgia, and that vehicle is traveling 95, and that vehicle is entered as a result as a suspect vehicle, and that suspect and child pulls off into, like, say, a local gas station and passes one of our cameras. We're going to be alerted immediately. And we're going to be able to intercept, you know, recover that child and make an arrest, where right now we may not be able to do that. So there's been situations where homicides were solved and people from other states have come in here. Also, a lot of times, like Colonel Oates mentioned, when people come to commit crimes in our communities, a lot of times they'll use vehicles that have stolen plates, or they'll use a stolen vehicle to come in to break into houses or whatever they may do, thinking that they're going to be non-identified. But as soon as they come in, we're going to be alerted, and we'll be able to intercept them before the crime takes place. So.
And how many companies did we talk to and mull over before we decided with Flock?
Well, when I was at the state police, I did a lot of research on this. The other major competitor, Vigilant Video, is a lot more expensive, and they do, my understanding is they might resell the data. So we wanted to give Flock Safety a chance. They have a great track record. If you look how many departments and how many states they operate in, they got a track record, so we're going with them.
What do you tell people who are concerned that Big Brother is watching them? Concerned from a civil liberties standpoint?
I tell you that we're going to use this technology responsibly. And we're going to be very transparent about how we use it. And that's why we're here today, to announce this and let everybody know exactly how these cameras are going to be used and what the potential it has to keep our community safer.
What are your factors for determining that this is effective?
Obviously, we're going to look at arrest. Hopefully 60 days from now, we can come back and say, look at these cases that were made that wouldn't have been made without this technology. And I think we're all going to be closely tracking the results, but looking at, you know, preliminary data over the last couple of days, is taking a peek. There's definitely some leads that came in, stolen vehicles, stolen plates. Things are already triggering these cameras that we're not even acting upon as of yet.
Steve, to follow up on what you said.
I think you should follow the microphone.
Okay, sorry. To follow up on what you said, your vehicle needs to get inputted into the database for basically almost a criminal reason or an investigative reason. That would be that it's wanted because it was a description given in a shooting, it's a stolen vehicle, it's a stolen plate, or whatever. If you're John Q. Public riding down the street, your plate is not entered into any of these alerts. So we are never going to see that. We are never going to see that plate, because the plates that we do see are in response to an alert. And when we see that alert, an officer has to physically look at that. All right, what's the alert? What does the alert say it is? The alert says it's a stolen vehicle. That officer then has to physically go to another database, run an NCIC check, and see, in fact, if it is a stolen vehicle and it is still actively stolen before he makes the engagement with it.
Presumably, this will be a quick lookup.
It's instantaneous. Well, within the 15 to 40 seconds as it passes the camera, the police cars out on the road, their mobile data terminals, as well as even dispatch, they're going to get a signal that there's an alert on this plate. When you go to the alert, it says this is the vehicle, this is what the alert's for, whether it's a missing person, an Amber Alert, a stolen plate, and then they take the appropriate action to go from there.
Officers in their cruisers on their laptops can access
yes.
And we also heard that dispatchers doing this. Is this gonna be more work for your dispatch? Is this gonna be dispatching you more dispatchers?
No, we typically have 3 dispatchers that are working, and one's on a secondary channel, and that's what they do, they run plates. So I could see this information being fed into there, and they're looking at it, vetting it, and then individual officers can get it directly if they choose to sign their email or phone number up. The SMS will come to them in real time.
So they have, your officers have access to information too. What, is there some sort of pathway to make sure they don't send out information? I know you're saying it's not going out, but we don't know what your officers are doing. No offense to your officers.
No, I get it. We have policies on, they see a lot of sensitive data. They can go into any database. They have access to a lot of sensitive information. And that's why I mentioned about the auditing. We audit all the data that they're running, and we're gonna do an audit with this system as well, just like we do in any other. There's checks and balances to it.
There's levels of permission that are given depending on what you have access to and what you can do in the system. So obviously your patrol officers, for the most part, are going to have lower limited levels. But with that being said, anytime one of them takes an action in the system, there's a digital footprint as to who did it, when they did it, and why they did it. And the audit, as the Colonel explained, is something that they know is going to take place to find out, you know, why did you check this? And there has to be a reason for why they checked it or why they went into it if they did a search.
So is this gonna fall under your current auditing measures, or is there something new that you're gonna have to do to update this?
This will be in addition to the auditing we do on other systems, but it's very easy to do. It's very easy to audit, and I don't think it would be a heavy lift for us.
So it's up and running now.
Yes, we're just not monitoring or acting upon the information until we're fully trained and officers know how to react to the hits, and the dispatchers know exactly how to react once they get it. And our investigators are also anxious to be able to have the database to solve crimes that take place.
So,
Chief,
can I just say, so for,
Need you in front of the
sure,
mic.
oh, sorry.
Sorry.
Thank you.
So for Pawtucket, our last cameras were installed just Friday. We are not active yet, nor are we monitoring them. We still have to go through the training, so our policy has to be finalized. We'll have to go through the training before we give access to any of the patrol officers or dispatchers or detectives. So as of right now, we're kind of in just a standstill until that happens.
And Woonsocket's in that same
Same.
position too.
12 are actually.
And you too?
Yes.
So the training has, how long is that gonna take, do you know?
Other roll call trainings are, 10, 15 minutes, and then
Okay.
we'll disseminate it to we have a system that disseminates training, so we'll do that as well.
As far as the money goes, if I'm doing my math correctly, in Cranston, it's somewhere around 100,000 or so. So in terms of the budget, not a huge dent, but did you have to carve out space for this, or how are you paying for it?
Well, once we evaluate it, if we do move forward, depending on how many cameras, we might retain all of them. We may reduce it down, it depends. But we are planning on using Burn Jag grant money, federal grant money, as well as narcotics forfeiture money. So no money will be coming out of the police budget, at least for the first year for this. And I think somebody asked about support from our administrators. The mayor is here, and he was very supportive, as he always is, of the police department, and he is in support of this technology, Mayor Hopkins. So, and as well as, I believe, their mayors as well. We wouldn't be here in front of you if they didn't support it.
Yeah, we're at the stage, Parker, we want to see the product, see what it works, see how effective it is, and then make a determination of just that. If we are going to go with it, what's the right number to go with? Because that number can always be expanded on, as well it can be contracted to. But we're just in that stage right now. That's the purpose of the 60-day pilot.